Today's video is a May reading wrap-up. So a wrap-up of all the books I've read in May. So welcome to Books with Karen. I'm Karen. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new, thanks so much for coming back. Now, when I did my TBR for May, I said I wanted to read, there was 8 books I put on my TBR list with a possible 9th, and I haven't done so well. Life kind of got in the way this month, so I've only actually managed to read 4 books so far. It is the 27th of May as I'm recording this, and I am expecting to read one more book for the book club live video, which is on the, I think it's the 4th of June, or is it the 2nd of June? It's one of the two. I'll put it on the screen. So I will be reading another one. So I thought I would just give you a review of the 4 books that I've already read. Now, the ones that I didn't read, I haven't read Anne of Green Gables. I haven't read Hydra. I haven't read Spread the Joy, which is an audio book. And the book club book, which was Mrs. Winterbottom Takes a Gap Year. I haven't read yet, but I will be actually starting that today. So that will be read in time for the book club next week. So the books I did read, this was the first one. I have wrote some notes on these because I do forget sometimes what I've read if I've left it 2 or 3 weeks. So the first one I read was Walk Yourself Happy by Julia Bradbury. Now, I was looking forward to reading this book because I enjoy walking, and I just wanted to know what the book was about, really. It was a book that I was given free when I booked a hotel stay in Scarborough a couple of years ago. So I didn't pay for the book, so that was a bonus. But it did say, Walk Yourself Happy will explain the elemental link between our own health, both physical and mental, and the natural world. And can a walk really improve your life? So I was expecting it to be really all about walking. Walk yourself happy, that's what you would expect. So looking at the chapters as the chapters came, I didn't take too much notice of the contents page, but there were chapters on nutrition, chapters on sleep, on breathing, on healing, chapters on how to keep your feet in good health. Then there was a chapter with some exercises on. And then there was kind of one little chapter at the end, which was about, great world walks. There was 5 really good world walks you could do in Japan and Sweden and what have you. And then there was a few great walks that are in the UK, but that was only one small chapter. I think that was about maybe 30 pages at the most. In fact, not even that, 20 pages maybe. So I was a little bit disappointed with this book. I did feel it read a little bit like a science textbook. She did rely on a lot of conversations with researchers and studies that had been done on how breathing helps you, on nutrition and stuff like that. And I felt like there was too much that kept saying, this study says, this professor says. It did read like a science textbook in places. And I did feel like the chapter on nutrition was a little bit preachy, and it felt a little bit, sanctimonious, because apparently Julia Bradbury eats organic vegetables for breakfast and, all of the good things that she eats, and, this is what you should eat. And I felt if I wanted a book on nutrition, I would have gone and got a book on nutrition. I wanted a book on walking and walks and the joy of walking, not a book on nutrition. And I think the same went for, I actually skipped most of the chapter that was on breathing. I don't feel like I know how to breathe. I know everybody knows how to breathe. It just comes naturally, obviously. And there are obviously breathing techniques you can do that make things better, but that's not what I wanted. So I skipped most of that chapter. I did skip a lot of the chapter on sleep because, I have recently kind of researched all about how to get better sleep. So I didn't feel like that was something that I wanted to get more into. Having said all that, there was some good bits in this book. There were some inspiring stories about people who have healed their, helped to their mental health and their physical health through walking. I feel like those stories could have been drawn out a bit more, could have been talked about more. So rather than them being like, 1 or 2 pages, it could have maybe been a whole chapter. Where did they walk? What exactly, step by step, how did they go about doing it, and how were they feeling, stuff like that. And there wasn't enough of that for me. Julia herself has had breast cancer, and she says walking has helped her immensely to recover from that. And she also talks about her journey through IVF, which I didn't really feel was relevant to the book. Even though it is an interesting story, I just didn't feel like that. It didn't fit for me. The book should have been more about great walks, around the UK, around the world. She does talk about walks, but she talks about like coast to coast walks and kind of mountain walks. Whereas I think I might have liked to hear more about, general walks that you can take when you maybe are just starting out walking and you can't walk that far. Maybe, nice parks you can go and walk in, nice river walks. It doesn't just have to be in the UK, that could have been around the world. So this was a little bit disappointing. There was a couple of things in the book that I did find interesting, and one of them is a page where it talks about the effects of walking. So after, what happens after 2 minutes, what happens to your body after 30 minutes, what happens after 90 minutes. I did find that bit quite interesting. There are also some exercises in this book that you are supposed to do outdoors. Some of them look okay, but some of them I think I would really struggle with. This one, for instance, is standing up from a sitting position without putting your hands down. I would find that really difficult. So a lot of those exercises might be an issue for some people. My cat thinks it's an issue for her as well. So all in all, I was disappointed in the book. I keep looking at my notes, that's why I'm looking down. I would have liked more about walks and the joy of walking rather than the science behind it. So I gave this book 2 stars. The next book I read was a library book, so I'll put a picture on the screen here because I've taken the book back. And it was a book called Ghosted by Jen Ashworth. Now this book I did really enjoy, and I've actually given this book 4 stars. So the book starts where Lauren and Mark are in their flat. They live in a high-rise block of flats. It sort of appears that they don't have a lot of money and the flat's a mess, and they're kind of lying in bed, and Lauren isn't happy with Mark because there is a couple of the curtain rings with the curtains hanging off, and she's been asking him to put them back on and he hasn't, so she's not happy with them. And then in the morning she's gone to work, and she comes home from work and Mark has disappeared. Just vanished into thin air. He's left his phone, he's left his wallet, there's just no trace of him. Now Lauren doesn't inform the police until about 5 weeks later, which is strange, and she doesn't even tell Mark's mother, which is also strange. And the book does give you a few kind of avenues where you think the book's going that way, the book's going this way, but there are a few red herrings in there. The story is basically Lauren's story of how she struggles on without Mark there and how it's affecting her life. And as the book goes on, you find out more and more backstory. You find out about how Lauren and Mark met. You find out more about Lauren's family, her parents, and how their relationship has affected things. And as you go through the book, you find out that the story isn't actually what you thought it was. It's a very gritty book. There's kind of real hard-hitting stories in this book that may trigger some people. I don't want to say what those triggers are because it will give the plot away, but there are triggers in it. and there's kind of, you think it's a supernatural book at some point, because she's hearing noises in the flat. There's a few things going on. You think, oh, that's the story, but really it isn't the story. The story is something else. And when you know what the story is, it's very clever. It's put together very cleverly, and it's a really interesting story, and it does make you think about the situation that Lauren and Mark have been in. So I did give this book 4 stars. I thought it was a really good book. It was quite a page turner. It wasn't anything major kind of happening in it that made you think, I need to know what's happening next. I think it was the way it was written that made you want to keep turning the pages. But it was, I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was a very interesting story, very gritty. And yeah, I gave that 4 stars. Highly recommend that. Now, the next book I read was The Borrower Bookshop Holiday. This is a romance story. Romance stories are not my thing. I'm not even sure where this book came from, but it's been on my bookshelf for a couple of years. But reading this just kind of reinforces my feelings that I don't do well with romance stories. I do recall reading Mills and Bones books when I was about 20, but yeah, at 61, romance stories aren't for me, which is a shame because I liked the premise of this book. So this book is about Jude, who is a 30-year-old woman who has looked after her grandma for most of her adult life while her parents run their bakery. She loves her grandma loves her. She's very feisty. They do fun things together. But her grandma has decided that she wants to go into this retirement village. She's excited about the a new adventure, and she tells Jude, she tells her she needs to get a life. Jude has just finished a degree in English literature that she's been doing part-time, and she's come out of a bad relationship with one of the professors at the university. So she decides she answers an ad to run a bookshop in a small Cornish town, Cornish village. You get to pay to go and run this bookshop and cafe for a week, which I thought was a really fun idea. I quite like to do that myself. The cafe only serves like cakes and tea and coffee, so I could handle that. But running the bookshop sounded fun. So she gets to Cornwall, and she goes into the bookshop, and it's all quaint and lovely, and I love the image of that. And then Elliot turns up, who is also there to run the bookshop for a week. So they don't know each other, but they've both been booked in to run this bookshop together. There's only 1 bedroom with 2 single beds. Yeah, I mean, you can see where it's going. And this Elliot character is so unrealistic. He's your typical romantic hero. He's kind of tall with muscles and long dark hair, and he's got this gentle side to him, and he's a vet, and he's unrealistic, really. And he's got a secret, of course. They all have a secret. And at first, Jude and Elliot don't get on, and then 3 days later, they're in bed together, and basically they're in love. And then something happens, and they fall out. It's just, when you find out what Elliot's secret is, it's like, really? Why wouldn't you just tell somebody that? It's all a bit unrealistic, a bit cheesy, very predictable. I mean, if you were on holiday lying by a pool, it might be worth a read, but it's not my cup of tea, definitely not. I mean, it's so cheesy. There was a line in here where they're running up a hill, and he says to her, "Can you run?" His voice is deep and husky and sexy enough to somehow trigger my legs into running again. Don't think anybody's voice is going to be sexy enough to trigger me into running, but there you go. That's a romance book for you. So I did like the idea of the bookshop. It's not a terrible story. It's just a cheesy romance. If you like that kind of thing, you'll probably like this. But I gave this 2.5 stars. Yeah, because I did like the idea of the bookshop. So The Borrower Bookshop Holiday by Kylie Dunbar, if you like that kind of thing. Not for me. So the last book I read is The Skeleton Key by Erin Kelly. This was a book that took a while for us to get into. And it's about two families, the Churchers and the Lalleys. And Frank Churcher, I think he's about 80 when the book starts. And 50 years ago, he painted a book called The Golden Bones that had a story attached to it. And The Golden Bones is based on an old folk song about this woman who marries, is called Eleanor, and she marries an old man, and she's really unhappy, and she takes a lover in this other guy called Tam, and the husband finds out and he murders her. He chops her up and he scatters her bones across the country. And Tam's devastated, and he comes across this witch who has cast a spell, and she says to him, if you find all of the bones and put them all back together, you can raise Eleanor from the dead and she'll be alive again. And that's basically what the Golden Bones book is that Frank Churcher develops. But it is more of a treasure hunt book. He sets clues, and he has hidden tiny little golden bones of a skeleton. So, you know, when it's all put back together, it's only about this big. And he's hid them across the country, and he leaves clues throughout this book for people to go and find these golden bones. And over the years, there's a group of people, kind of a cult formed, called the Bone Hunters, who are trying to put Eleanor back together. But there's one bone, the pelvic bone, which is never found. And some of these bone hunters become quite, become psychos really, and they think that Frank's daughter, who is also called Eleanor, they think her pelvic bone is the clue is the bone to put the skeleton back together for some reason when it's only this big. And if they cut it out of her, then they can put the skeleton back together and they can raise Eleanor, who doesn't exist. So basically this book, The Golden Bones, really destroys the lives of the two families, the Churchers and the Lalleys. And on the 50th anniversary of The Golden Bones, Frank decides to reveal where the location of the final pelvic bone is, which causes a huge furore, and there's press, and the bone hunters are coming out of the closet and all that. But this reveal throws up more secrets that have been kept over this 50 years, and the secrets kind of unfold and you start to find out what they are, and that's basically the book. What I found was there was far too many characters in here. Within the first 100 pages, my head was done in with it, really. There was too many plots. There was too many twists and turns. The chapters are in timelines, so it would start in 2021, then it would jump back to 1970, then it would jump to 1991, then it was all over the place. The different chapters kept jumping backwards and forwards, and that was quite confusing. I had to keep looking back to see which timeline they were talking about at some point. And it probably took me halfway through the book until I really got into it. I was kind of tempted to not finish this book. It was about halfway through and it started to get interesting, and I started to want to know what was going on. I wanted to know the secrets. I wanted to know what was happening. Because again, there's like in most of these books, there are red herrings, but everything is tied up quite neatly at the end. It was quite a satisfying ending. I definitely think the book was too long. It is 494 pages. What I did like was it actually printed, I don't know if this is a real folk song called To Gather the Bones, but they printed the whole words, the lyrics in the back, and I quite enjoyed reading that. I'm not sure if it's something I've heard before. I don't know if it's real or whether it's fiction, that folklore. That's my cat just coming in. But yeah, I gave this 3 stars, mainly because there was too much going on. There was no real downtime in the book, and there was a couple of characters in here where I thought, were they really necessary? You know, they didn't really add anything to the story. Yeah, so I gave this 3 stars. I would read another Erin Kelly. In fact, I think I have got another Erin Kelly book. I've got He Said, She Said, which is on my list of books to read for the year. So we'll get to that at some point. But yeah, apparently this is a film as well, which would be interesting to see how they did that. That would be interesting. If anybody has read any of the books I've talked about, let me know in the comments below if your thoughts are the same as mine or different. You know, we're all entitled to our own opinions. We all like things that other people won't like. So let me know in the comments below. So those are the 4 books that I read this month. The ones that I haven't read, I will get to within the next month. And the book Mrs. Winterbottom Takes a Gap Year is the book club book for May. If you don't know what my book club is, it's called Once Upon a Book Club, and I will put in the description box below the link to the Facebook group for it. So if you want to join that, it's free to join. You're very welcome. We talk books, and on YouTube once a month I'll do a YouTube live and we review the book that we've read for that month. So like I said, it's Mrs. Winterbottom Takes a Gap Year if you want to quickly read that before next week. June's book is going to be Her Fearful Symmetry, I think it's called, by Audrey Neffenegger. I'll put the link to that in the description box below, and we are about to vote on July's book as well. So if you're interested, you will be able to get involved in that if you join the Facebook group. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.